Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody has had a Merry Christmas. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. Again, that's 407-566-2555. So basically, again, I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas and a good holiday season we're in the middle of here. About half a week to go before we're into the New Year's and 2026 and what that's going to bring. So I've just got some stuff that I'm going to go over in regards to what happened in 2025, what the predictions are for 2026, and all of that kind of good stuff. And just really, it's like whatever your needs are when it comes to real estate, what maybe is your best path in regards to what you want to do. But looking at what happened last week is that there were 413 homes that were sold, and that's up from 376 the week before. So a good healthy number that was sold last week. The median price for single family homes increased to 435. And basically, when you're looking at the inventory, it increased by 119. So that takes us to 8416. So how that all shakes out is that we're still in 4.7 months of inventory. So a normal market is considered between 4 and 6 months. So this is kind of an average week. So that's probably pretty close to where we're at. So we're definitely in a normal market when it comes to single family homes. Now, when it comes to different price points and that kind of thing, it's a little bit different, but and every neighborhood is different as well. But this is an overall stat for Lake, Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties. So of those 413 homes, 38 of them were under 250, 34 between 250 and 300, 103 between 300 and 400, 70 between 400 and 500, 131 between 500 and a million, and then there were 28 of them over a million. So when you're looking at the months of inventory, like I said, there were 4.7 overall, 4 months of inventory under 250, 3.69, 250 to 300. Then we're 300 to 400. So basically it's right around 4 all the way up to 400,000. Then we go to about 5 from 400 to 500,000. Then we definitely go to 5 from 500 to a million, and then we go to 7 over a million. So, when it comes down to it, you can't just say, hey, this is what's going on in the market, and that's what's going to happen with my house or my area or something like that. Everything is very local, and we have to look at it that way. So I think it's really important that we do that. When we're looking at the list to ask price ratio, it's at 96.21. We're at 98 roughly, all the way from 250 all the way up to a million. We're between 98 and 97. And then on the ends, we're at 92 for under 250, and over a million, we were at 93.57. So that, kind of brings it down to 96 overall. So basically, the bottom line, you might say, well, that's weird that it's lower on the low end as well as the high end. And the reason for that is because, number one, on the low end, usually those houses need quite a bit of work. And so people just offer less for them and they usually get it. And then on the high end, regardless of how much people are paying for a house, they're definitely wanting some wiggle room and that kind of stuff in there. They usually have plans that they're going to do at least 10% of redoing anything that's in the house, and in the amount that they spend. So if they spend $2 million on a house, then they're going to spend $200,000 probably in making it their own, and that even if it's in perfect condition. And we just find that is pretty consistent across the board, just because, if you're going to spend that much for a house, then you're going to want it to have the certain things in certain ways that you want it. And the old owner is probably not going to have 100% of the taste in regards to what you're going to have. So that's basically how it happens that way, and all of that kind of good stuff. When you're looking at the days on the market, it's at 70 days right now is what it is generally until you get to a contract. When we're looking at condos, townhomes, and villas, there were 144 last week versus 103. So that was up. The median price was 267.5, so 267.5 versus 435. So affordability might be something that condos work for you, but you have to understand if you are getting a loan on a condo, that basically the lender is also going to include the condo fees and everything in that. And so it's not as far apart as you might think that it is. But the inventory decreased by 15 and now is at 4250. But so we're going to find that basically is still giving us an awful lot of inventory in the condo market. So basically, when we're looking at that 144, there were 63 of them under 250, 22 were between 250 and 300, 32 between 300 and 400, 18 between 4 and 5, 7 between 500 and a million, and 2 of them over a million. So when we're looking at the months of inventory, we're at 6.81 because the volume was up quite a bit this week. We've been sitting at probably around 10 to 12 months of inventory. So it was kind of a high week for sales this week, which hopefully that will continue. Under 250, we've got 6 months of inventory, 7 between 250 and 300, and 300 and 400. Then we go to still the same for 4 to 5. Then we go to 9 for 500 to a million. And because 2 of them sold over a million, it's saying we only have 2 months of inventory, which is not exactly correct because there's many weeks where we don't sell any houses in that price range or any condos in that price range, and 94 days on the market. So, when it comes to condos, you definitely have to look at what's going on in that particular development and in that condo association and see what's going on there. For example, if in your condo development, say there's 200 units that are there and there's 20 of them that are on the market, that's 10% of the inventory is of available ones that are on the market. You're definitely going to have to stand out. If the average person looks at 5 or 6 of them to make a decision if they're going to decide in that development, you really have to be priced and marketed correctly in order for them to even consider looking at your property. And so it really comes down to making sure that you're putting your best foot forward to make sure that all of the ducks are in a row in order to make things happen when it comes to selling any property. So we can just kind of emphasize that when it comes to a condo, because they're in a condo development, there's only a certain number of floor plans. And so there's a certain number of properties in there that all look very similar when they first started. Now, maybe they have been walls painted, floors changed, maybe the kitchens have changed, bathrooms have changed, and a lot of times not all of that stuff has happened. And so when you're looking at it comparing apples to apples, you definitely want to make sure that your property stands out above all the others. And when everything is the same, like a commodity, the only thing that people think they can choose is price. And that's definitely not where you want to be, because then what that means is that's just a drive to the bottom. It's like, who's going to accept the lowest price? And so when you can show value in your property, whether it's a condo, whether it's a house, or whatever it is that makes it stand out and gives people a reason to want it above every other property, they're going to pay more for it. And so that's basically what it comes down to when you're marketing a property, what you really need to do and to see it. One example that I've heard many times and that kind of thing, it's been talked about, and this is obviously not in Central Florida, but it just to give you a reference in regards to what I'm talking about. So basically, when someone like Tom Cruise decides to sell their house in LA, they're not going to put it on the market in a normal fashion because people aren't going to look at it the price per square foot. They're not going to look at it as in that particular neighborhood or whatever. They're going to look at it as Tom Cruise's house. And so because it belonged to Tom Cruise, it's going to have additional money that people are willing to pay because they want to live and have the prestige that they live in the same place that Tom Cruise did, or anybody else out there, that has that kind of story. And so basically, when it comes down to it, you're going to find that a premium is going to be paid for that kind of stuff. So basically, when it comes to your own particular property that you want to sell, you want to have those kinds of things that are available that you're going to be marketing and what makes your house different. Otherwise, it is price. And if there are too many of on the market, then obviously that's just a race to price of who's going to accept the best price. And that's absolutely not what you want when it comes to buying or selling your house. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. And to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So, we're at the end of the year, and so I thought I would just look at where we were a year ago in housing and see. And this is, the weekly report, which is what I always report here in regards to what's going on. And a year ago, we basically, for single family homes, there were 466 sold, 413 this week. Basically, the median price was at 417, 435 this week. And the inventory is the big story in regards to what happened. It was at that right now, or a year ago, it was at 7516. And this year we are at 8416. So we're not a whole lot different in regards to that. The median price, if you just look week over week, has gone up a little bit, 2 or 3%, which is basically, what we consider a normal market. And so that's basically what's been happening, all year long when it comes to that. When we're looking at condos, there were 144 that sold this year, like we talked about, and 137 the year before. Now the median price was 300,000 last year, and the median price is 267 this year. So you would think that there was a big difference, and it isn't as big a difference as you would think. That's just a week. I think on average it was probably still somewhere around that 267 in regards to what happens. The inventory a year ago was let's see what that was at. The year ago it was at 3830, and the inventory now is at 4250. So again, not a huge change in regards to what happened. Everything pretty much stayed pretty much flat when it came to the number of condos on the market and everything in regards to what's going on. So we had a lot of sales that happened over the year, because they were, if on average it was probably 400 homes a week, probably about 125 condos, so in the neighborhood of 500 plus properties, probably 500 or 600, properties a week that are selling in those 4 counties. So we've had a healthy market all year, and I think that that's something that we can be excited about if you're a buyer or seller, because when it's consistent and all of that kind of stuff, you're not going to have the big spikes. You're not going to have either up or down. It's just going to be pretty steady in regards to what's going on. And that is pretty true just from the standpoint of when you look at what the interest rates and all of that kind of stuff is, that they've come down a little bit over the year, but they've still been, a little bit on the high side for what people would like for these price points. So, what I mean by that is that basically, when it comes down to it, affordability is probably the biggest challenge for some people in our market. When you get to the point where you, as a combined household income, are making somewhere in the neighborhood of about 100 grand or so, you can afford that median price house. But if you are less than that, then you have a hard time affording that. And so as a result of that, there's less people to buy the lower end house for you to move up, and so that's been our biggest sticking point when it comes down to it. And so I think that the things that are going on to look at affordability is very exciting to me. What the predictions are for 2026, which I was looking at that, and I think that they're saying that the interest rates they think will go down probably about a half a percent. And so right now they're like at about 6.18, 6.19, somewhere around there. And so they're predicting that it will be in the fives and probably about 5.6, 5.7, somewhere around there, which it seems like what the happy spot where everybody would like them to be is somewhere around five. They're talking about extending the amount of time that you have a mortgage, which I've talked about that before. And in my opinion, I think that's awesome, from the standpoint of affordability. The thing that people that I've talked to about it, they're like, oh my gosh, having a mortgage for 50 years, that's an awful long time. And yes, it is. But the thing is that you're not probably going to have that mortgage for 50 years. It's not a lot of people that hold on to that home for 50 years, let alone hold on to that same mortgage. If the interest rates go down and you're able to refinance and you're able to get uh, an interest rate that's a lot lower and lower the number of years from 50 to 30 or 50 to 15 or something like that, you're probably going to do that. And so you're not going to have that loan forever, but what it's going to do is it's going to get you in the door. And I think that's really, for the first time buyer, that's really what's most important is being able to get in the door, to be able to afford it, to be able to have, the type of lifestyle and everything that you want in the home that you want and start to build that equity and everything. When it comes down to it today, there's a lot of multi-generation homes that people are looking for, not a lot of those in the market. I also read that there are some other things that are on the horizon when it comes to more modular home properties and those kinds of properties that are easier to afford because the cost is less. And I know sometimes people think that that's a step down, and in many cases they're just as strong, good, or whatever as a house that was built on the ground. They're just built in a more streamlined process, and so as a result of that, they can have those abilities to scale to get things to be a little bit lower priced and that kind of thing too. And I think that when it comes to affordability, the other thing that I think people are looking at is that they're looking at the size of the home. Maybe you can get by with a few 100 square foot less, and so that might cost you less money too. The interesting thing that I find probably with the houses that are being built today versus the houses that were built maybe 20, 30 years ago is that there were still a lot of formal living dining rooms and that kind of thing that existed 25, 30 years ago. Whereas today, a lot of times it's just one big great room opening. And so that might actually save a couple 100 square feet right there with that living dining room area, maybe even 300 or 400 square feet, depending on the size of the home. And so when it comes down to it, there's a lot of things that you can do, a lot of things that you can look at that are, make the houses more affordable. And basically, even if you're in the higher price ranges, you're like, well, that's not me. But if someone can't buy your house because they can't afford it, then that does affect you. It affects the amount that you're going to get for your house. So we like to see everything affordable out there, everything making sense, in my opinion. And, there's always ups and downs and that kind of things in little neighborhoods or things of what's going on. And if I've seen any prices going down, they're in the outlier places, like the places where people went because they could afford them, but it wasn't necessarily where they wanted to be. And so it didn't have that stick-to-itiveness that they're like, hey, I want to stay here. They didn't really settle in those places. They decided that it was too far to travel or whatever. And so they decided to move to a different place. But in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty to discuss the sale of your home. You can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So when I was thinking about it and looking at it and looking at the market and what's going on and really the people that I'm working with and everything at this point in time, and really, real estate is such a personal decision when it comes down to it. Everybody has their own needs, their own wants, their own desires when it comes down to it, and they're looking for a certain product, that's going to work for them and their family. And if their family is expanding and they've got more kids and they need that, or like I talked about, if they've got multi-generations that are all going to be living together, they're looking at how that's all going to handle. Or I've been working with a couple people lately that are looking for second homes, and they want to have a place where they can definitely come with their whole family, that they don't want anyone else to live in it while they're not there. They don't want to do the Airbnb thing. They just want to have a great place where they can come, that's a neighborhood that they know, and that they can get to know the neighbors. They own businesses in other parts of the country, but they come here whenever they can get away, which sometimes it's in their slow season they can come for a couple of weeks, or they can come for just a few days here and there, but they don't ever know when they're going to be able to pick up and leave, so they don't want to have someone else in there. They just want to be able to come and enjoy it. And their kids are adult kids now, and so they've got their own families, and so they can get away and come and use it too. And it seems like Orlando is kind of the place where they like to come, and where they all come and come and be together. There's a couple families that are here right now that are here for the holidays. They're here for the 2 weeks, and so they're looking at properties and that kind of thing. And I think that it's interesting. There are always people that tell me, "Oh, I don't want to put my house on the market, during the holidays because nobody's going to look at it." Well, that's not absolutely true. It comes down to that people are always looking for properties, anytime when the mood is right. And now that Christmas is over, they might be like, okay, well, it's like work has kind of been really strange this season. It seems like when I've been working with people, a lot of times people have off Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And then this week, it was like everybody's like, well, we're going to be closing on Friday too, because it doesn't make sense to just come back for one day and then be off again for another couple of days. So it's been a very long weekend. So it's almost like you've got 5 days off and 2 days of work. And I think that this week coming up is going to be really similar to that too. So when people are in that position and they've got extra time, then they're thinking about, okay, now's the time that either we want to sell our house, or we're looking at maybe we want to get something different so that we're all set for the next year or the next season of our life in regards to where we want to go and what we want to do. And the funny thing is, a lot of times in January, people are like, hey, I want to put my house on the market. And the inventory usually does increase in January. That's generally when we do have a bit of an increase, maybe a couple 300 instead of 100 houses coming on the market more. So I'm talking about, because we have 400 selling, so we always have about 400 coming on. But an extra an extra 300 or 400, kind of happen in that January period because people are like, okay, I'm ready to do it now. And they've been planning this for months, it seems like. And so I always tell people, hey, I would go ahead and do it a little earlier rather than later. Why be a part of the pack? Let's stand out. And so a lot of people do that. But there are opportunities out there of a lot of houses that are on the market. But what I find for a lot of buyers, my favorite thing to do almost is to find people properties that are off market. And you might think, well, that's strange. And, the thing is, even with months of inventory that we've got, there aren't always houses on the market that exactly match what the buyer is looking for. And so if that house does exist out there, and the worst thing for me to have happen, in my opinion, is that somebody goes ahead and they compromise a little bit. And sometimes you've got to compromise because of your price, but, they compromise and they go, gosh, like say, I'd like that house on the corner right there. That would be my perfect house. I know the people, I've been there before, and I know the layout or whatever. I like the location. I like the view from the back. I like all of those things about this house, but it's not on the market. And so I guess I'll go with this one that's an interior lot that, it backs up to somebody's house and not really what I want. Then, say in January or whatever, that other house goes on the market. And we never even asked them if they would even consider selling. Well, I consider that a failure if I'm just going based on what's actually on the market. And so my favorite thing to do is to actually find that needle in the haystack. And so I definitely have the resources and the ways and everything that we do that. And just last week, I had a situation where I have that exact thing going on. There is a client that I have that wants to buy a particular property that wants to, he wants, there's 44 of them that exist like this, but he doesn't want all 44 of them because he wants a particular view and different things that are coming on with it. So of that particular floor plan. So what I did is I've contacted all 44 of those people, and I'm waiting to hear from some of them, but I've already heard from a few of them that said, yeah, we would entertain if the offer was right and that it made sense for us. It's just an investment property for us, and we've had it for a while and we've gotten a lot of good out of it, but it's not necessarily something that we want. And sometimes it's people that already live there that have contacted me as well and say, hey, if the price is right, we were thinking about it, but we thought we were going to have a hard time selling our property, so we decided not to even entertain the offer. And so basically what it has come down to is that we're finding these off-market properties for people all the time that are exactly what they're looking for. They're not competing against anybody else. The sellers like it because they're not putting their house on the market. It's not out there being, paraded around and all of that kind of good stuff, and the days on the market adding up that don't even make sense. But basically the bottom line is that it's a perfect scenario for all of them out there. And so what we do is that, and what I do is that I go ahead and I contact all those people, and so I can find those needles in the haystack. And like I said, it's one of my favorite things to do is to do that because I think it's so rewarding to find that needle in the haystack for people that's exactly what they want, and they're not compromising, and they're getting the best thing that they could get for them and their family. And so, it just takes a little bit of extra work, but I'm all for it and want to make sure that the people find exactly what they're looking for. And I think that's kind of the care that everybody wants to have happen for them, right? It's like when you go to look for anything, you don't want to compromise, whether it's clothes, whether it's a car, whether it's a bike, or a gym or anything like that. You want to look around and find that right thing for you. And so that's what I am committed to doing, to make sure that my buyers get exactly what they want. And I think that that's the kind of care that everybody wants. But there's more to come in the next hour, next segment. We don't talk that long, but basically in regards to what's going on in Central Florida and what's the best thing for you in 2026. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I wanted to, I was talking about predictions a little bit earlier and just kind of reflecting in regards to 2025 and what's going to happen in 2026. And of course, there's no crystal ball in regards to figuring out what's happening and all of that kind of good stuff. When the interest rates we're at 3 and 4%, basically the number of properties that were selling every week, houses, was about 800. When the market changed and the interest rates went up to 6 and 7, at which they did pretty quickly, then the number of houses selling went to 400 or 500 a week, between 4 and 5. So the number of properties that happened to is kind of what the bottom line is. And so people said, okay, I'm not going to move. And you would think, oh, well, that would really have increased the inventory, which it did increase it to a healthy market now, because at that point in time, we were at a half a month of inventory. So that what that meant is there were bidding wars on any property that came out. Everybody was, scrambling. There were a lot of people that were like buying houses unseen, and it was not really a healthy situation for buyers, for sure. And for sellers, even if you would sell your house with a bidding war, you would be going, okay, now I've got to do that bidding war. But you would kind of do it, and it all worked. But basically, when the interest rates changed, and then there are people out there that are sitting on low interest rates as well, and so they're going, okay, I've got a 3% mortgage right now, or maybe even 2.75. I know there's been several of those that I've worked with, some of those sellers, and they're going, all right, if I sell this and I even buy something that's at the same price of what I'm selling right now, my payment is going to be significantly higher just because of the interest rate. And so as a result of that, that's why the number of properties that were selling went down significantly, because people were going, hey, it doesn't make sense for me to move to increase my payment, and I would have, kind of a similar house as what I've got right now. And if I'm going to upgrade, then, my house is going to be more expensive, and this, that, and the other thing, and all that kind of good stuff as well. So basically, when it comes down to it, you really need to look at the whole situation in regards to what's going on, what's happening, all of that kind of stuff out there, and look at the best situation for yourself. And, when people buy a house, it's a big decision. It's one of the biggest decisions that they'll ever make in their life. Not necessarily the most important, but one of the most important. I think that, faith is your, number one, and number two would be the spouse and everything that you chose. But basically, it's a big decision and everything out there. So when you're coming into your situation in regard to figuring out, what's the best thing for you and your family, there's a lot of factors that come into play. And so if those factors change, which they're talking about that they're possibly going to change, that the interest rates will come down, or the affordability, like I was talking about before, that could definitely increase the price of properties, because it would increase the amount of people that could afford them, the number of people that were looking for them, and then that would happen. It's like everybody says, they're looking at it, and the number of properties that are out there is not enough. And you can tell that because of the rates that people pay for rent. If there were plenty of properties out there and a lot of empty units, the rental prices would go down as well, and we have not seen that. They've said that the rental prices are down maybe 1%, but they went up like 20-30% in the last few years. And so basically when you're coming down 1% and you're saying, wow, that's a big win, it's still, when you're looking at the overall, it's up significantly, and they're quite pricey when it comes to it. But what we do have still happening in Florida, and I think we're very fortunate for this because we're growing, and that's what you want to be doing, in my opinion. And so there is still a net influx of people moving to Florida of about 1,000 people a day is what they say, and that's for the whole state. So it's not necessarily for the for our area, but there are people coming in here. And then when you're looking at basically, and I should really look that up because it was either 1,000 a day or 1,000 a week, but I want to say it's a day. And then they're saying that when it's going to go down, and it is going to go down a little bit, but they're saying it's going to go to 750. So it's going to go down a little bit, but it's not going to go down too much. And so when you're looking at that, we're still in a really good place. Our economy is really good. We've got people that want to come here. We were the number one destination, I saw on the news, for where people were coming for the holidays and all of that in the United States and everything. And I know that because whenever I go to fly during the holidays, it's like I have to choose the days that I'm flying because otherwise they're really expensive, probably about the most expensive of the year when you're looking at coming to Orlando, and the flights are always full, is basically, what's going on. So we're very fortunate to have all of the things here in Central Florida that people want to come to see. But then our economy has really balanced out in the last few years with a lot more than tourism that's here, with the medical things that are here, with a lot of I want to say like the Lockheed Martins and those kinds of companies that are expanding and growing and everything. And there's a lot of activity and everything, and a lot of jobs and a lot of things that are here for people to do. And that obviously without that, the economy would be struggling as well. So I'm just thankful that I do live in a place that's got those opportunities, and that I work in a place that's got that as well. And, it's so great to just get to know so many of you as time goes on, to actually work with you, to help you with you and your family and those goals that you have in finding the place that you call home, or selling that place that you call home, and everything to find the best possible solution for everybody involved. And it's just really rewarding and fun, and I enjoy it immensely. I enjoy getting to know all of you, so I'm very thankful for 2025 and all the years previous to that I've been working. I've been a realtor here since 2005, so this was my 20th year being a realtor, and basically there's thousands of people that I've been able to help over those years, and I'm looking forward to the next several years doing the same thing. So, if you have any questions, I'm just more than happy to answer them at any point in time. Just give us a call, and we're more than happy to help you out. But I want to wish everyone a happy new year, because next time I talk to you, it'll be 2026. We've got a whole new year on the horizon with a lot of things that are going to be great. Enjoy the holidays with your friends and family, and we'll look forward to seeing you next year. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we will see you next year. Have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.